I want to address something that just came up in the chat.
Oh,
Uh,
goody!
yeah, did y'all see that debate where IP called Aron-Ra out on his BS definition of faith? He had no clue it was rooted in Pistis Greek and lost his ever-loving shit. So rational. Well, of course, I did have that clue, and I have spoken with people, including one of them here, who is fluent in Koine Greek, that my
I would not
definition.
say fluent. I'm not fluent.
Okay,
Okay, shut up, Lawrence. You know what he wants.
I talked to a handful of people that understand Koine Greek, and they all agreed. Yeah, my definition is not bullshit. My definition is actually accurate. IP strawmanned my position, giving a different definition than what I gave. I explained the definition, and IP strawmanned it to turn it into something that he said that it bastardization of what I said. So yeah, that's what happened there. So IP was using the wrong definition. His is the one that is bullshit. I was using the correct definition. There is a link to prove that in the chat.
I like the
Excellent.
I
And
like the follow up, Arn, because I recently watched it again. You and Eric Hernandez, who agreed with you within 15 minutes, and then spent an hour and a half strawmanning you again
yeah,
on the same thing.
it's pretty standard tactics, but I'll allow especially that you're not the first person in history to point out the dishonest and contorted uh, definition of faith in practice as it is used by the religious. And yes, you could argue that in certain times and places it has meant trust or blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's no, religious faith is an absurdity, and
All
it
right,
has always been.
give me a few minutes here. I'm gonna
And
pull up
Aaron
LSJ.
doesn't know about the. And it's funny that he says that Aaron doesn't know about the origin of the word in Greek being pistis because
The problem is Arn didn't say anything about the definition of pistis. Arn said it wasn't based on scientific evidence, and no one got that.
Yeah, well, that would
And
involve
I've had to
listening.
explain many times that religious faith is based instead on an assumption of authority.
And as a young Christian in like literally in youth conferences, listening to youth pastors and speakers that were called in specially to speak to the young adults who were going to be the future, I literally heard them explicitly say that the understanding of truth that they had was an authority based one, that you require an authority to ground your sense of reality in. And that is manifestly ridiculous in anything else. You need perhaps an authority for some social functioning, perhaps, depending on the, that absolutely. But the idea that, the snow outside my window is not snow unless it is somehow based in God saying so because he is the authority. That is stupid.
If you're curious, I do have Pistis pulled up in LSJ, and I've told Arn this before. So the or at least I think I gave you a shorter version. So like yes, Pistis can obviously mean faith, but in some contexts, like let's see, there's it can mean trust, confidence, assurance. Let's see what else we have here. So in some contexts, it could be like the means of persuasion. For example, in the phrase pistis ek biou, which is usually translated as like proof from life. But it's like your reason to believe from life, like an anecdotal, like kind of like anecdotal evidence, at least in that phrase. But they're good faith, trustworthiness, honesty, being persuaded, mostly trust, faithfulness. There's a bunch. That which is entrusted. There is. Let's see. Oh yeah. In certain contexts, it can be like protection, like in like vassal contexts. It could mean
Yeah, but that's
protect them.
based on a vow, and the keeping of a vow,
Yeah,
which
exactly. Yeah.
is what links it to the concept of faith,
Yeah. So
trust.
the issue was that the definitions of pistis are not appreciably different than the definitions of faith that are currently used. The issue is the equivocation or attempted equivocation when they say that that faith is the evidence of things not seen, and they claim that there's evidence. No, it's that faith means that you're going to believe this, and pistis means that you're going to believe this because an authority told you to, or because you were always taught that, or whatever. It's not that you were compelled to believe that because of evidence. That and no amount of evidence is going to change your mind either. If you're a faithful believer, you're going to believe that without evidence and against all evidence to the contrary. And what IP then said was commending that the definition of pistis that the definition had to say that you're going to believe this against all evidence to the contrary. Well, the definition of faith doesn't say that either, but that in the context that it is used, there's two different contexts. You either have faith in your wife, this is one that they often equivocate. You have faith in your wife. I mean, that's just a colloquial version of trust, but we're in the religious context. Religious faith is not trusting in the evidence, which is what the equivocators want. They want to say that faith is trusting in the evidence. No, faith is trusting in the authority, not the evidence.
Always.
And then so what happened that right after that, when I lost my shit, as the guy said, was because the 11,002 idiot comes up and says, and this is what was his name? I forget. Eric Hernandez comes up and says, but I have evidence. No, you fucking don't. We've had this conversation thousands and thousands of times. It always turns out that you have a circular argument. Logical fallacies are not evidence. And so,
Is it look at the trees,
yes,
or I have a
exactly.
feeling, or I was sad and then something cheered me up,
See,
or
the thing is,
someone was nice to me when I didn't expect it once, or I have a book?
there's like look at the trees would be like a reason for pistis, right? Because you would believe because you have been persuaded by looking at the trees. So yeah, it can. There are a variety of related terms too. Like pistis is just like one form of this
But
word.
you have a reason for everything you believe. Those reasons are not necessarily evidence. If I believe in Santa because my daddy told me and I am full,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
so you
that's
you trust
authority.
them. Yeah, yeah.
And
Ergo
I had
faith.
to clarify, and I got the Eric Hernandez in a follow up conversation where we had to clarify that evidence is a body of facts that are positively indicative of and or exclusively concordant with one available hypothesis or position over any other. And when
Ding.
he then tried to tell me that he had subjective evidence, and so that I had to
That's-
change my understanding to admit that
No.
he has subjective evidence. But I'm like, subjective evidence is only evidence to you. By definition, it's not evidence to me.
Oh. Yeah, even if revelation were possible and not complete bullshit that is indistinguishable from lies, mental delusions, hysteria, and various other problems or hallucinogens that we are all perfectly well aware of and can prove have actually happened in the fact in the past. Uh, Even logically speaking, as Thomas Paine, yeah, it was Thomas Paine said, by definition, revelation, if it is evidence only to the person who receives it. It is hearsay to everyone after. And today, the ones they tell it is hearsay upon hearsay. A double hearsay is not something to place your faith in, particularly not on something which is apparently quite important, such as the fate of your eternal soul. You know, if someone tells me that someone else told them that Donald Trump stunk in court, I'm probably going to buy it because that sounds very plausible. But I'm not risking my life over that.